Hello and welcome. That's not a very good start. Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of
Not Fighting.
Real excited about the routine that we've built into all of our episodes now.
Yes.
Yes.
Excitement.
The thing is like I find that it's hard to like get out of that kind of like when you have like a way that you like, I don't know, start something. I don't know. I've done a decent amount of like podcasts and things. I can't help myself from saying like hello and welcome everyone. I don't know why I want to say that.
I don't know. Like it's like every YouTuber ever that's like, welcome back to my channel. And or what else? Like there's like
comment, and subscribe.
Yeah.
Like there was I read something.
It's like a standard like thing that you have to say, I guess, just to make sure people do the things that are gonna make you money on your channel.
I remember hearing this thing. Either you showed it to me or I just read it someplace. But it was about like a little kid that like said that to somebody as they were leaving their house. And they were like, why did you say that? And they're like, that's what you say whenever you're leaving, right? Like, they'd watched so many YouTube videos. They were like, the people were leaving. They're like, okay, like, comment, and subscribe.
Like, that's the official, like, goodbye now.
Yeah, I don't know if that was, like, something that you had told me or something I read.
No, I didn't.
I could see our good friends, the Hayslips, maybe one of them slipping that in there, perhaps.
Yeah, Jack would do it.
Shout out to the Hayslips if they're watching. So today we're talking about something that I think is worth actually noting at first if actually exists or not. And I think it's such an interesting phenomenon because there's memes and all kinds of other stuff on it, and that is...
blue belts quitting after they get their belt, the blue belt blues or whatever that is that you want to call it, or it's just, you get that belt and then we never see them again.
Yeah, and I think, everybody can think of somebody that, like, quit when they were a blue belt or something along those lines.
I can think of several.
I remember when I was a blue belt. Let's see if you... again, we're really good about naming names or, like, editing people out as necessary if you watch the last episode.
Just stop over-talking.
But I remember being a blue belt and always training with a guy that trained... We were part of the same association, but he trained at another location, and... he would always show up and we'd have the most competitive rolls, and he would always like give me 1,000 caveats before we rolled, like, well, I'm tired, like I didn't get a great night's sleep last night, like I'm mineral deprived, my doctor says, or whatever, Then we roll and it's like, back and forth, and all the time at blue belt. And
he was super tough and talented,
and people
lots of excuses, but he was really tough.
At blue belt, everybody in the academy was like, oh, Tyler and this other person are like the best blue belts that we've got around here, right? And then there was one day we were training and I choked him unconscious with a loop choke. It might have been the first time I ever did a loop choke. And I just remember like he got up and he was kind of embarrassed. I never saw him again. Yeah, but I feel like that's like a different scenario. That's like somebody whose ego, well, maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing that we're like talking about. It's like, we don't know, like, for real, why does this happen? We're both black belts, so we didn't quit at that at blue belt. Can't relate.
We kept training, so I don't know. But I've seen it happen so many times, and there's like it's like the joke, the running joke in the community, and so it's like, well, what is that? Like, maybe it is like, oh, your ego just can't handle it. You got your blue belt, and then you're not as good as you thought you were, so
and that's
you just quit. I don't know.
When we were getting into this episode, we were like, I was like, if we do this episode, like, we can't just be like, I don't think that's really a thing,
No, it's for sure a thing.
And that was like the first part is like basically like, is that like a warranted, like, I don't know, like there's all these memes, we were kind of talking about it, but it's like that definitely exists, right? Like once you get your blue belt, there's this like huge drop off. For sure. It's like, it's like, why does that happen? And I know, in jiu-jitsu, it's like you put a lot of time and energy into your training and just getting to those next levels and being able to, get that promotion. And I think like one of the most exciting promotions you'll ever get is like your first stripe on your white belt, right? Like you get a stripe and you're like, oh my God, I know some stuff. Like, it's like validation that you're actually improving. And so I feel like that's the only time that like
I even cared about stripes, but I see other people too, and it's like stripe. Yeah, like all promotions are important in their own way, and like I think everybody kind of has like a different opinion about it, or like, you know, you hold a different weight to it. But then the next thing is like blue belt, like, because blue belt's like you have color now, so you're not just a white belt. Like you don't
have to tell people you're a white belt. I remember being like a one stripe white belt, and being like a one stripe white belt because of circumstances for like 6 to 8 months or something like that, and then just being like, people are like, oh, what belt are you? And be like, I'm a white belt, but here's the thing.
But I beat a lot of blue belts in training.
Yeah, I could beat like some blue belts. And that doesn't seem impressive either, but if you knew. Like if we were going to wrestle right now, like you'd be surprised.
Oh, so much douchebaggery when you were a young baby. White belt, blue belt, and also a child. Hard,
if you will.
Yep. You would describe yourself as that.
So I think, like, you know, the blue belt blues is you put it at the beginning. Like, I think a lot of that has to do with just the fact that, like, you know, for me in my circumstances, I'm like young. Like, you know, you and I talk about this all the time about getting married whenever you're really young, and like being lucky that you and I
were blue belts when we got married.
Yeah, we were blue belts when we got married. But your life changes so much whenever you're young. You know, like when you're late teens, 20s, like your life changes a lot. So jiu-jitsu might be your thing, but then like.
Yeah, like you start jiu-jitsu in college, and like that's your thing. Like I know in where we were, there was a lot of colleges that had like a special like programs on their campuses. It was like an extracurricular thing that they would have jiu-jitsu programs. And so a lot of the people that we met started in those scenarios. And so, you know, whether they move away after, you know, you move and maybe you don't find an academy that you like, so things change, or, you know, it's just like, now I have a career to focus on, or I have other things to do. I think that's like plays a big role in it. But also like injuries, because like think about I think that might be one of the biggest things is like people getting hurt, because you think about how many, like when you first start out, I think that's when you hurt yourself the most. Yeah. Because you just don't know what you're doing yet. You don't know how, like, you
don't know what's going to hurt you and what's not.
Yeah. Like, you haven't learned yet.
You go to the left, now you got a bulging disc in your neck. You go to the right and you're fine. You know?
Or like, you know, you fight a certain sweep and blown out your knee. Like, no, just sometimes just go with it, because the opposite is bad.
Or like your natural reactions are not as good, and they're more likely to injure you.
Yeah.
And also you can't stay out of bad positions that, like, you know, are painful. Like I always say this. You know, whenever I train and I have like an injury, somebody will be like, "Oh, you know, like, do you have an injury or whatever?" And it's like, I'll take care of me.
Yeah.
Because the truth is like, there's very few people just like in a normal class that I can roll with where I'm like, I'm gonna decide like what positions I'm in and which positions I'm not in.
Yes.
And like that kind of control gives you the ability to keep yourself out of like all kinds of things that, like, if you got a hurt shoulder,
protect yourself from
injuries,
away from
people,
or protect
whatever.
your injuries, I should say.
So I agree with you. I think injuries are a big part.
Yeah, and think about it. If you, let's say you just got your blue belt and then you have like this really bad injury where you had to have surgery and you sit out for months. I think injuries in general are probably one of the biggest factors in people quitting jiu-jitsu or just not coming back to it, because we were talking about like earlier, like the routine. You know, you get in this routine. It's like even, you know, every day it's like, okay, these days this is when I'm going to train. And even if as a hobbyist, it's like Monday, Wednesday, Friday is my jiu-jitsu nights and that kind of thing. But then you take into account an injury. It's like, well, now I'm sidelined, I can't train. You stop going, which for me, I'm like, even if you can't train, I like to show up, just maybe sit on the mats or just like watch technique or something, just to feel like I'm doing something.
You enjoy jiu-jitsu.
I enjoy like learning and watching, even if because it makes me crazy to be away from it. So if I'm hurt, the least I can do is just like maybe sit on the sidelines and like watch.
I think that's one of the things that happens. Like when you're a blue belt, you might not be in love with jiu-jitsu yet. You might be in love with it. Is like
you might be obsessed with it.
Yeah, but
not in love.
Yeah, it could just easily be CrossFit or something like that. You've gotten all into right now.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, like, jiu-jitsu, like, when you're injured, you have to be able to, like, you know, like go and hang out at class, be around people, watch some technique, like
just do something.
It's nice to be able to do those things, but you kind of have to too to stay like kind of like engaged.
Yeah, just keep your mind in it. And so if you get out of that routine, and especially as like a white or a blue belt, you know, it's very hard to get back into that routine. I see that happen so many times where it's like you've had this injury, I had surgery, I had to sit out, and like at the beginning of the surgery you're going, or before you have to get surgery, you're like crazy because I'm like, like I'm gonna have to take this time off. And then by the time like you've gone through the surgery, then you're just like basically you're just like, I don't know, like you have other things, like you're just like, I don't know, like I'm out of shape, it's gonna hurt, you have all the excuses of why you don't want to get back into that routine, right? And so that's kind of like I can see that being a big factor in that. And
I think a part of that too is just like I think it's the injury piece of it is non-discriminatory, meaning like you can be good, you can be bad, you can be young, you can be old. The injuries can like get you away from, you know, your ability to be, you know, getting to another belt, like going beyond that. Like I remember whenever we started, there was a dude named Skip that people always talked about. I think I met him once. Everybody's like, Skip.
He's so good. Because I heard about him and I never met him. Well, I think I met him, but not on the mats.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever trained with him. But I just remember at the time when I started, there was like no other colored belts around there. Like, Skip got his blue belt in a year. That never happens. Skip is amazing. Shout out to Skip, by the way. Sorry you're not doing jiu-jitsu anymore, man.
Maybe he is. I don't know.
Maybe he is, but...
Yeah, there's a lot of that happens. And then, you know, I think a lot of people get discouraged about how long it might take to get that belt, too. And so you think... okay, like blue belts is you've accomplished something in the sport, right? So it's like maybe you set it out like you just are very goal oriented and like this was something, or for whatever reasons, like this is something that's like I wanted to achieve or I wanted to do, and so your first goal is to get that belt. That's the first belt you can achieve. It's like a
certification of proficiency.
Yeah,
you know, like I've heard it said before that like a blue belt in jiu-jitsu is a lot like a black belt in other martial arts. I don't know that that's apt because in a blue belt in jiu-jitsu means you have a basic understanding of some of the techniques. Like I don't know what that would mean in like other martial arts.
We really haven't done other martial arts, so I don't.
But in terms of effectiveness, like a blue belt in jiu-jitsu basically means anybody that walks through the door that's never trained jiu-jitsu before, you should pretty much be able to like
handle yourself.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and so, but like I think. You know, you think about it, and I don't think that this is something that is like we've talked about this, where it's like it used to be like the standard for getting a black belt is probably like 12 years or something like that, like 10 to 14 years if I had to like put a range on it. But I think that that's kind of like shortening just because the availability of jiu-jitsu and like just whether the ability to learn, like there's more schools, there's more teachers, there's just like more of it. So it's like people are getting the information faster.
And jiu-jitsu itself is better and more effective, right?
Yeah.
Like how many times when we were learning jiu-jitsu have we learned to do a technique differently or better than we did before?
Yeah, for sure.
And you're like relearning stuff. And now there's just enough out there to where it's like if you're training at a reputable school, you're not going to have to relearn how to do the scissor sweep 5 times. You're just going to like learn it right the first time.
Yeah, that's true. But I think people will get discouraged though, like thinking about how like, okay, well, I got my blue belt, but it's going to be so long for me to get a black belt. Like maybe that seems unachievable. And so you're just like, well, like maybe I'll move on to my next hobby or whatever, you know, the next thing I'm trying to do.
Yeah. And I think too, like once you get a blue belt, like, I think you also think about like, well, what would it take to get a purple belt? And you're like, God, that seems so far away.
And you seem like, I'm never going to be a purple belt or like, what, I don't know. It's just, it's very, very.
I think part of
it seems like this like crazy task. Sorry, I don't never have my phone on.
But I think part of that comes from the fact that like, when you get a blue belt too, like you feel like these expectations get higher. Like how many times we talked about in the last podcast, people being like, I'm not ready for this belt or whatever. But like at blue belt, you have this sense of pride, but it's like you're going to have to go into class knowing that like at blue belt, you're like at a starting point. So there's probably still some white belts that aren't blue belts yet that are going to mess you up every now and then.
Yeah.
And then all the other blue belts are going to beat you, you know?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's kind of a tough situation, and some people.
Yeah, you're still like at the bottom of the totem pole, and so the expectations might be different.
You know, we talked about this before about competitors, but like some competitors, they do best whenever they feel like they got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And then this is kind of the same situation where you have people that all of a sudden, it's like when you start jiu-jitsu, it's like, I'm just a beginner, I'm a white belt. But now that you're a blue belt.
Yeah. There's a target on your back. Like, that's with every promotion, right? Like, the moment you get promoted, like, you have this, like, everybody wants to just mess you up and just be like, okay, like, let's humble you again. Mm-hmm. You're not that good.
And also with blue belt, you feel like, oh, I've been training for a while. Like, I shouldn't be getting destroyed by other blue belts or even by white belts sometimes. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think that's a common fallacy that people run into a lot, where they feel like they have to defend their belt, you know? Like, oh, yeah. Like, I'm a brown belt. I can't be losing to this purple belt or whatever.
And it's like, and it comes back to, it's like everybody's on their own journey. So you might be really proficient in your technique and you might understand, but there might be somebody that just, you know, a fast learner, super skilled athlete or whatever, and they just got your number. Or that's one thing. It's like, there's certain people that I'm like, I just fight bad against it, and it's like they know exactly how to fight my game perfectly. So it's like, you just because they know that doesn't mean that everybody does, and you know, that's a learning ability or opportunity for me to start like, okay, I need to train with that person because it's annoying, even whatever rank they are, that they just got my number. You know, I hate that.
And I think that, you know, like all of that can be, you know, kind of chalked up to it being an ego thing. And but I do think there's other things that come into play where, you know, we talked about the idea of like being young when you start just doing a lot of things changing, but it's like, you know, like girlfriends get in the way if you're a guy. I feel like significant others are like one of the biggest reasons that people quit jiu-jitsu. And I think jiu-jitsu at blue belt. Can't relate, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I just can't relate.
No. Well, but I've seen it happen, and I've seen, you know, I'm always like, the guys that train with us, I'm like always trying to recruit women. So I'm like, oh, your girlfriend or your spouse or whatever, bring them in. And then some guys are like, no, like, this is my thing, and they don't want to cross that line or like bring her into their world or whatever. I've had girls do the same, like say the same. I have a couple of women that have said like, no, like, this is my thing. He has his own stuff. I want to keep it separate, which, you know, to each their own. But I also see that being, you know, a big problem, because jiu-jitsu is like it's a big time commitment, because consistency is key in like progressing and just getting better. And so for most people, you know, you're training like 4 times a week at least, and it's, you know, your evenings are taken up, like your whole world's like kind of like, you start kind of like it's, you know, the lifestyle. So you have to like, you know, your life revolves around that, and you schedule your life around tournaments or just the training or whatever. And significant others start getting jealous or not liking it, and they're like, no, like, don't train,
or
you know,
or
time
commitment, you know. And I think I see it more so probably with people that are younger, but I think it can happen at any age, where it's like, if you're a guy and all of a sudden you're going jiu-jitsu, like, I don't think it's unreasonable to go 3 to 4 times a week or whatever. Mm-hmm. But if you're a new girlfriend, or maybe even just a wife, and you've got kids, and maybe you didn't have kids before, or there's a lot of different situations where it's like, you're going to jiu-jitsu again.
Yes.
Like, how many times? Yes. I mean, I've heard that a billion times, but it's like, for somebody else, it's like, it's reasonable for you to exercise and work out, but jiu-jitsu takes a little bit more time.
Yeah. And it's not just an hour of your night. Like, you know, it's, you know, maybe 2 or 3 hours sometimes, just all encompassing, really, and, truly.
Yeah, so you're going 3 or 4 times a week, and then you do some it's seminars, like you're watching it on your phone.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, and then, you know, if you're a significant other, you're looking at it and you're like, okay, like, how into jiu-jitsu?
Like, do you really need to be doing this?
Can't you just go like once or twice a week? And the thing is, I think it can be demoralizing.
Can't we just go to the gym together? Can we just go to a yoga class together, and that will be our thing?
But the thing is, it's like, if you just go to jiu-jitsu like once or twice a week, you're probably not going to progress a whole bunch. And I think there's a decent amount of people that do jiu-jitsu enough, and once you get to blue belt, you're like, listen, I'm not going to progress or get much better going at this pace, so I'd rather just not.
Yeah. Yeah. Or and I don't know that how much of it is a conscious, like, decision, right? I think it's like almost circumstance. It's like just life gets in the way, things happen, and then you just all of a sudden find yourself going less and less, and then you're like, that's, you know, I haven't gone in a month now, so I'm falling behind. You show up, you feel like, do I even know how to do this anymore? You're super out of shape. You're breathing heavy and tired in the warm-ups.
Like, now they're getting better.
And those people are getting better than me.
Last time we trained, he mounted me. You know?
Yeah, it's like these things pile up, and then you're like, yeah, I think I'm just going to cancel my membership because I don't know that I can.
I'm going to freeze it.
We're going to freeze it. And you're frozen your membership for 3 years now.
And then people will be like, man, you get back to jiu-jitsu, and then like the class client's like, yeah, man, I'm coming back. Like next week, I'm coming back. And the thing is like,
how many times have you had that where you're like, somebody's like, yeah, I'm coming back, and then they come back, you see them one time,
you're like,
and
this is great, man. I'm going to be back.
Man, I'm back to training, and it's like never again. Then I don't see them for like 6 months
because it's hard. I mean, I think that's like one of the biggest reasons why people like just any reason why people quit jiu-jitsu is it's hard for two reasons. One, jiu-jitsu is really hard to learn. It takes forever, and it takes a long time to be good at it. And number two is it takes a lot of like ongoing commitment to stay good at it.
Yeah,
like, that's the thing is like how many people do you know that are really good at jiu-jitsu that for whatever reason took a break or came back, and when they come back, you're like, oh man, like they're not anywhere close to where they were. That doesn't mean you don't get it back pretty quickly.
No, that's one thing I always tell people, like when they're coming back from a break, and it's just like, no, like, yeah, okay, you feel tired, you feel, you know, like you don't know anything today because it's like your timing's off, your cardio's not there, but I'm like, it'll come back to you. Like you'll be surprised how quickly you remember, and your body will like remember how to do these things. It's like you just have to give yourself a little bit of a like kind of like cut yourself some slack. You know, you're coming off, like nobody expects you to be perfect from a layoff, so just it's okay. Just come back, pace yourself. Don't try and do too much at once because then you're going to be in the injury problem again. So just ease into it.
That's a big thing with the injury thing going full circle is like, you know, people that get injured, one of their biggest problems is, you know, they try to hop back in and they're like, you know, they got hurt maybe because they were just overuse injuries, 6 days a week, twice a day or some craziness. And like next thing you know, like they come back and they're like, I'm gonna hop back in and I need to make up for lost time. And
so you're trying to like train 3 times a day and you're trying to overdo it, and then you're hurt again.
Yeah. And that's I think that's another piece of the blue belt thing is like anytime you have somebody, and maybe you feel differently, but like anytime I see a blue belt and they're like the most into jiu-jitsu, like they couldn't be more obsessed.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's their life. They live, sleep, and breathe it. You know, it's like that almost is more concerning to me when I see that. I'm always like, yeah, but you know, like live your life. Maybe, you know, do other things too.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I quit my job. I quit school. I live outside in my car. All I do is jiu-jitsu now. All I do is study. I stole a credit card so I could subscribe to the Mendez Brothers online. And you're like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, maybe you shouldn't have done all that. Like, and, you know,
maybe still go to school. It's okay.
Yeah, maybe still go to school. And that's the thing is, like, when I see that, I'm always like, this person's going to burn out because it's not sustainable. Jiu-jitsu takes so long to get good at that it's, and there are, like, highs and lows with it. And that's one thing that's helped me and you is, like, you know, anytime that I'm, like, kind of, you know, on my low in jiu-jitsu, like you're there to pick me up. And it goes both ways, you know. And I think that that's part of it with people. Sometimes is like you go through those lows and you don't have somebody to basically like pull you back out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something like just in the last couple of years that you have had a little bit of a hard time with is just adjusting to how jiu-jitsu has been prioritized in your life, right? Because for a long time it was this like main goal focus. You were always wanting to compete and do that, and whereas I have shifted to where it's more cash. Not cool, bro.
You've got a dog barking at me, chewing on me. It's all right.
But I've shifted to where it's more of my like career and focus, and you have been more focused on your career and, you know, at your real job, as I say. And so like jiu-jitsu is taking a back seat to that, and I think that's been hard for you to adapt to. But it doesn't mean that it's still you're still training like 4 to 5 days a week. You're still doing all these things and keeping relevant with your technique and all that kind of stuff.
And the thing is, like it's beneficial for me to go through that process now as a black belt, because I always tell people it's like, for me at this point now, like having, done jiu-jitsu for well over a decade and be a black belt and having spent time where I'm training twice a day, every day, probably too much. Like, I've learned a lot of lessons, and a lot of lessons the hard way. For me now, it's not the quantity of the training, it's the quality. Yeah. Being able to train with other really high-level black belts on a regular basis. Yeah. And, I'll have these periods of time where I don't get to train a lot, Yeah. But I will have periods of time, too, where I can focus a little bit more. And in those periods of time, it's a couple weeks, of like just regular getting into the routine, and I feel like I'm back at it. But if you're a blue belt, like that looks totally different. Yeah. And it's not even just about like you have other priorities. Sometimes you have other commitments. Like for me with my career, it's like I have employees that I have to like care about. Like what I do affects them. And then I think people have families, Yeah. It's like,
family is a big one too, I think, especially for people starting a family. So you go from, not having kids to having kids is like a huge life change and commitment. And so where jiu-jitsu might have been the most important thing in your life as a blue belt, then you have a child and you're like, well, no, like this kid is like way more important than anything. And so finding that balance of being able to, let's say your mindset was like only jiu-jitsu, then you have a child now and it's like, well, I feel obligated to this child and they can't find the balance between like just tailoring back on jiu-jitsu and like taking care, like making their child a priority. It's like you have this all or nothing kind of like
and I think that's really common. I think that's a thread that kind of goes throughout this like blue belt thing, because you have to be able to say like jiu-jitsu like it's going to be something that maybe you have all the time in the world for, and maybe sometimes you don't, but you have to stick with it no matter what, right?
Yeah. And like for me, like I just always tell people, like my advice is like just like it's okay to take some time off, it's okay to like have other things going on, but you don't have to like quit, or you just try and be as consistent as you can be for your schedule in your life. It doesn't have to be what other people are doing and you're like, oh, but they're training this much. Like, who cares what they're doing? It's like, if you love this and like if it's something you're passionate about, then you'll make time, you'll prioritize it. It's like I would say the same thing when I was personal training to my clients all the time. They were just like, I just don't have time for that, or I don't have time for this. And it's like, no, if you care about something, you'll make it a priority. Like you'll figure out you'll find the time to do it. And I think and nowadays, like when we were training and when we first started training, there wasn't there was only evening classes. That's the only option we had. So, but now I'm like, most schools have the morning class, the noon class. Like there's opportunities all day to train.
Mats,
there's a million things, so it's like you don't have an excuse really anymore. So if you fall out of love and you're just like, I just don't really care about it anymore, okay, I'm gonna be like, and that's fine.
I think what's amazing to me is I think back to 10 years ago, and just even the circumstances that we started in, like starting out of a taekwondo school that also offered jiu-jitsu instructors had classes there and stuff like that, where it's like I think all the reasons why people still quit at blue belt existed then and existed now. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like the convenience of jiu-jitsu doesn't make it any easier. It just increases the volume.
Yeah. So, I mean, for you and I, it's like we're just like we're guessing at the reasons why this happens, or why, I don't know, maybe our friend Rob Miley can weigh in on this at some.
Shout out to Rob Miley.
RobMiley.com.
The Cage. RobMiley.com. Actually, I think he let the domain lapse, maybe. We should buy it and put some really egregious, terrible things on it.
We should.
We should buy it, yeah. But no, the other thing that I think about is a lot of these things we're talking about, they happen more so I would say in younger people than older. But these things are sort of universal. Although I will say some of the things that I would say are personality based, those things are pretty steady throughout. But then the things that are life circumstance based, I think that those things kind of start to tear down as you get older. Because if you start jiu-jitsu and you're 40 years old, the chances of you getting married, starting a family, getting into a new career,
the major life changes aren't going to be as major.
And that's why
often.
And you'll have these phenom blue belt kids sometimes. I had kids that would do my teens class when we lived in St. Louis, and I'd be like, man, this kid has a lot of potential. And then they get in high school and they can play other sports and do other stuff, and you'd be like, well, I'm not going to tell somebody.
I think that is one of the things that is, and maybe it's just because when you talk about jiu-jitsu and jiu-jitsu culture, it's not necessarily about just kids. Jiu-jitsu is kind of a separate thing. in a lot of ways, but I would say like there's a huge drop off in like teenagers in jiu-jitsu too. So you'll have these kids, they're very consistent, like all through from like 5 years old until they hit like middle school or high school. And then at high school, it's like they just quit. And there's just because circumstance, like friends are more important, boyfriends are more important. Like you have other sports options and that's associated with your school. So it's like a friends thing,
and
you know?
I talked about this before. It's like, you know, we've had parents that we're good friends with that have said like, you know, my son, he really wants to play football, but, you know, like, he won't be able to come to jiu-jitsu then. And we're like,
let him play.
Play football. Like, you in jiu-jitsu your whole life. You can only play football for, for middle school, high school, whatever amount, up until high school. Like, if you're really good and you want to, you can play college football, you know? But, like, I mean, realistically, like...
You have a very short period of time to do a lot of those sports. So I always encourage parents to, like, if your kids want to do those things, like, let them do it. Let them get involved.
There's no pot of gold at the end of the jiu-jitsu rainbow. So if your kid can get a golf scholarship, like, go for it.
But, and like jiu-jitsu is not, like, really seasonal. So you have opportunities all year where other sports are seasonal. So it's like, okay, well, they're playing baseball, but in the off-season, they can come train. Like... Not a big deal. So don't like, I feel like parents like don't stress that or force your kids to do something when
I don't have kids. So like doesn't,
but I teach a lot of kids and I see it where it's like, you can't make them love a sport.
What I've seen people have success with and not have success with is like when you force a kid to do a sport, like it usually doesn't work out super great. But I do see parents throw their kids into everything, and not in like forcing their kids to do everything, but making them try everything. And the kids just naturally gravitate to the things they like, which are usually the things that they're good at.
Yeah.
So if your kid's really good at jiu-jitsu, like then there's a really good chance that they're going to just want to like maybe they try football or whatever, and they're like, I suck at football, but like I want to go back and do jiu-jitsu, mom.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
Great.
They'll find a way. I don't know, but I just think, I don't know. Why, I don't know. I just lost my train of thought. Cash is distracting me.
But, I mean, you know, aside from kids, the only other demographic that I wonder about a little bit is, like, are women in the same category? Would you say women have all the same experiences in terms of the things that we went over as blue belts as men do? Oh,
yeah, for sure. I think it's universal. Like, it's one of those things too, where I think back to how many women that for a short period of time were like a part of my like everyday, you know, I saw them and then you still stay connected, but like they stopped training or whatever. And I'm like, man, like what happened to that person? Or you know, or this person, they were so good. They had so much potential. And I'm like, the amount of people that you meet in jiu-jitsu is insane. Like training and like at your academies. And then the amount of people too, like the turnover is crazy. Like how many people just were all in for so long and then they quit, they fall off or whatever. And for whatever reasons, and it's just like it kind of makes me sad because I don't know, like I miss a lot of them. Yeah,
it's true. Like you build a lot of really good relationships that way. Families is kind of that way too, you know. And that's always tough whenever you have like a family has kids and you don't get to see them anymore.
Oh yeah.
There's a family in St. Louis we miss all the time. A bunch of kids that we had, both of us in different classes and stuff, and that's tough. And I think that, you know, like when you look at jiu-jitsu as a whole, like that's a piece of all this. Like you have people that come in and out of your life, and some of it's for all kinds of different circumstances. And blue belt just happens to be that time period where, you know, you've been doing jiu-jitsu long enough, yet you have to be blue belt for so long that like it just this like it's a pretty volatile position for you to fall off. Like most people can commit to anything for a year, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially as an adult, right? That's something I think even just like a regular fitness journey or something like that. It's like you can commit to it for so long, but it's hard to keep that going, especially after a year.
Yeah. And I think that's, you know, like you and I talk about all the time, like when you see somebody and you're like, why does that person look familiar? The first thing you think is like, I picture them in a gi. Because it's like, is this just some person that I knew in jiu-jitsu that maybe like doesn't train anymore or something like that? And I think that's the reason why partially it's such a meme or it's such like a common thing is because like, you know, you miss those people that you used to get to train with all the time.
That's the thing is, like, most of the time, like, if I'm harassing you about, like, where have you been? Like, why haven't you been training? And it's not, like, because I'm, like, you need to train, like, trying to, like, stay on your butt. It's like, no, I just want you to be around because, like, I miss you or I care about you or whatever. Yeah. Like, it's fun to have in class or whatever.
If you're a crappy person, I don't want to see you at all. You're never going to hear from me.
Yeah, I'm never going to ask
like, hey,
you
man,
where you been.
Jitsu.
Yeah, I won't.
I'm just going to be like, hey.
What's up?
Haven't seen you in a minute, but that's not a big deal. Well, I think
my God.
I feel like we tackled it in a fair way. And I also think
but I would love to hear from other people. Maybe we can, like, get a blue belt quitter.
Yes, if you're a blue belt quitter, we do have a voicemail
know.
line, so you can go to notfighting.com. We've got the number up there.
Or just send us some messages on our Instas too.
Yeah, however you think that you can get a hold of us, you probably can. And if you have a fair argument, we'll put it on the show. If you leave us a voicemail on the voicemail line, we'll play it on the show.
I'm generally, like, curious about what the real reasons are. You know?
Yeah, I would say I am too. I'm curious if there's something that we haven't touched on that people are like, no, wait. The number one reason why blue belts quit is because dog attacks, and that's something you guys completely missed and glossed over here.
Yep.
There's somebody out there that's like,
oh my God,
that's not funny. My brother was attacked by a dog, and he was a blue belt. He served in the military for 20 years. I don't know. Anyways, we want to thank you all for joining us on another episode of
Not Fighting.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.